information, visit vote411.org. All you have to do is enter your address. With all these decisions to make, these debates are provided by the League of Women Voters as a vital public service. We are a small local league, but we accomplish a lot. In addition to candidates' forums, in the past year, the Larchmont Mamaroneck League has sponsored local students to participate in the State League's Inside Albany program. We've hosted our annual luncheon with Speaker State Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins. We've registered graduating seniors at Mamaroneck High School to vote, contributed to the Vote 411 Voters Guide, sponsored a Women's History Month poster contest at the Hummocks Middle School, welcomed new citizens at Naturalization Court, and co-sponsored a drug forum at the high school. In order for us to keep providing these services, though, we need help from all of you, with jobs large and small. If you even have just a few hours of your time, we really could use your help. Although our name reflects our roots in the women's suffrage movement, we welcome all genders, anybody. Believe me, if you're a warm, living body, we're happy to have you. So you can find us online at lwvlm.org, or you can speak with us tonight. We hope you'll join us. Before we begin, I want to thank LMC-TV for their live broadcast, the town of Mamaroneck for the use of the town center, also our board member Beth Radow, who will be serving as our timekeeper tonight. And finally, I want to welcome and thank our moderator tonight, Ms. Deb Morell. Ms. Morell has been a board member and past president of the League of Women Voters of Scarsdale, and she's an active member of the League of Women Voters of Westchester as well. We're pleased to have her here with us tonight, and I now turn the debates over to Ms. Morell.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Is that okay? Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you all for being here. I ask, first of all, that you please turn off or silence any cell phones as a matter of courtesy. The League of Women Voters of Mamaroneck and Larchmont owns the forum, and only those permitted by the League may record the program. And even those must air the forum in its entirety. The FCC requires that a debate must not be edited and must be broadcast in its entirety, either live or reasonably soon after it takes place. Unauthorized video or audio recordings of all or any portion of this forum are not permitted. If an unauthorized person is observed to be recording, I will pause the forum, ask the person to stop, and I will not resume until the person stops recording. If need be, I will terminate the forum if the person will not stop or leave. So as Alice said, this evening we're going to have a brief presentation of the arguments in favor of and in opposition to the New York State Constitutional Convention by these two seniors from Mamaroneck High School, Zach Berger and Jackson Bayer. Mr. Berger will present the arguments in favor, and Mr. Bayer will present the opposition. So with that, gentlemen.
As you can probably tell by the plaque in front of me and what she has said, I'm Zach, and I will be talking about the positives of holding a constitutional convention. In 2017, the legislative session in New York State has ranked as one of the most inefficient and unproductive ones in recent memory. This is mainly due to large partisan gridlock and corruption amongst Albany, especially within our legislative body. New York State is infamous for having an extremely corrupt legislature. In fact, if you Google New York State corrupt officials, you'll get a list of people, of their scandals and what they've done for the past 5 years, which will be multiple pages long. In a convention, this has stopped many things in which we would like to get done from getting done. New York State has a record of being on the frontier of progressive legislation, yet we have gotten nothing done in recent memory on issues such as gun control, environmental protections, and election reform. A constitutional convention could attack this issue in two ways. First off, it could help fix Albany by passing anti-corruption legislation that would not otherwise have gotten passed because, first off, as I said, it struggles with partisan gridlock, and also legislatures. Officials have no reason to want to control this corruption because it could possibly inflict badly upon themselves. So through a convention which is held by independent citizens of New York State, through them being elected as delegates, you would be able to attack corruption in New York State. The other way in which a constitutional convention would be able to help this is because you would be able to directly legislate issues in which we would want to get done, such as passing early voting in New York State, which has been attempted many times but has not gotten done through traditional means. Passing early voting would allow would allow us to increase the number of people who would be able to participate in the governmental process, and in turn make it so that New York State government is more reflective of the voices of the people who live in our state. Important groups such as the New York State Bar has endorsed holding a convention, stating that it gives us a unique opportunity to pass legislation, to add amendments to our Constitution that would allow us to attack corruption and help fix the court system in New York State, which is also known for being an extremely inefficient court. A convention would also be able to help get issues such as term limits for legislators for government officials passed, because unlike if it had to go through the legislature, it would not be different people who would not otherwise be impacted on it would be the ones who would be implementing it upon the officials. Instead of having officials try to regulate themselves, we'd have the people regulating the officials like it should be. By voting for the CON-CON, you are allowing change which otherwise would not happen to get done. And it is extremely important to remember to turn over your ballot and vote yes.
First off, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters in the town of Mamaroneck for their hospitality. We are very grateful for the opportunity to come and speak in front of you. Zach, for the first minute, I sort of agreed with everything you said. There is no doubt in my mind that New York state politics has become increasingly corrupt, and it's a problem. But going through with the Constitutional Convention, at least in my opinion, would be like throwing a Hail Mary pass on a second down. Frankly, I don't think it's the most efficient way to do it. There are other ways to do it. Also, on the back of your ballot, Proposal 2 would bring significant reform to our state's constitution without the high cost of a constitutional convention. Constitutional convention would be a tremendous burden on taxpayers. It would be a gamble, most obviously. And it happened in 1967. Many of you probably won't know that, but you know what happened in 1967? It did nothing, and it cost taxpayers money. If you were to ask me, that could happen again, and with the level of corruption that persists in New York State, I think we would be better going on a different path. Say that this did pass on November 7th, majority of the state votes yes. This could harm members of unions, teachers, police officers, firefighters. They'd lose key bargaining rights, benefits. It would reduce pensions. Nobody wants to work longer because of reduced pensions. It makes your life, everybody wants to live a happy life after retirement. And honestly, there's no reason to do this. And this could be a possibility of if the Constitutional Convention actually happens. Also, if it happens, you might have those same very corrupt officials that control our houses in Albany running the Constitutional Convention. Even worse, out-of-state interests, big business interests could have a tremendous say of what actually goes on in this convention. Otherwise, environmental, for example, other things besides union protections that could be impacted is environmental protections, such as, Forever Wild, it protects the Adirondacks. This could be taken away, and it would have a tremendous impact on the beauty that upstate that is the Adirondacks. Depending on your view on it, gun control. If you are happy, I don't think anybody's really happy with the level of gun control either way. Either way you support it, Democrat or Republican or whatever party. This could have a major impact. Gun control could either be strengthened, which some people are quite against, and gun control by chance could also be taken away, which would not be the best for our counties or state citizens. Also, there are numerous protections that could be removed that we couldn't be aware of. So in my opinion, Constitutional Convention, it's a gamble, and it's an expensive gamble at that. So we have better ways to do that. They're more efficient, and I encourage you to say no on the Constitutional Convention, because to be honest, it's just more taxes. And for Constitutional Convention, there are more efficient ways to clean up corruption in Albany. I am not denying by any stretch that Albany is some utopian model of government, but of course it does need a fixing up, but we have better ways to do this. I encourage you, when you flip over that ballot on November 7th, to bubble in no for the Constitutional Convention. I think it's too much of a cost on the citizens of New York State. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. That was really wonderful.
Okay, so next up on our agenda is Town of Mamaroneck candidates. Thank you very much, Jackson and Zach. Very informative, thank you.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So, Alice, if it's all right with you, I'm just going to run quickly through the format that we're going to use for the rest of the program. The league will permit each candidate for office to make a 1.5-minute opening statement. The order of speaking for each debate has been predetermined by lot. I will read all the questions. For the uncontested races for Mamaroneck Town Supervisor and Council members, the league will provide one question for each candidate, and each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer. The candidates for these uncontested races will not be making closing statements. For the contested races, the order for the debate is first, Westchester County Legislator for District 7, second, Mamaroneck Village Mayor, and third, Mamaroneck Village Trustee. For these candidates, the league will provide the first 2 or 3 questions, and then I will begin reading written questions that have been submitted by members of the audience. Candidates will have 1.5 minutes to respond to each question, and once we're done with question and answer, each candidate may make a 1.5 minute closing statement. I just want to briefly run through the rules for the questions. Questions must address issues, not personalities. Questions must be legibly written, please. On the questionnaire form, please provide your name and address and indicate to whom the question is addressed. A question should not exceed 30 seconds in length. I will read the question and ask the questioner to confirm his or her presence. The questioner must be present at the time the question is asked, or it will not be submitted to the candidates. Questions must be directed to a specific candidate. Questions may be directed to a specific candidate or to all candidates, but all candidates will have an opportunity to respond to each question. The league will avoid redundant questions and reserves the right to combine audience questions that are the same or similar. There is no rebuttal. Candidates may include rebuttal commentary in their closing statements if they so wish. Please be respectful and do not speak out or comment in any way during the forum. Also, please hold applause until all candidates have made their closing statements at the end of each debate. As moderator, I am in charge of this forum and I will enforce the League's rules. I will now introduce the candidates for the uncontested races. First, Nancy Seligson, the candidate for Town of Mamaroneck Supervisor, running on the Democratic Party ticket, and the candidates for the 2 open seats for Town of Mamaroneck Council members, Jane Alkind-Eny and Sabrina Fiddleman, both running on the Democratic Party ticket. First, each of you may make a 1.5-minute introductory statement. Please follow the directions from our timekeeper. You'll get a 30-second warning and then the stop sign. So we'll start with you, Ms. Seligson.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for giving me this opportunity to speak tonight. I'm lucky to be running in an unopposed election, but it might be better for the community if I did have an opponent. We might be better served if we had the opportunity to talk about the importance of local government and the values and qualities we want in our elected officials. A contested election could also induce more people to vote, and it is essential now more than ever that people get out to vote on November 7th. Town government affects your daily quality of life by providing important and essential services that we sometimes take for granted, such as collecting the garbage, protecting our residents with fire, ambulance, and police services, snow plowing, recreation, and much more. Through my 6 years as supervisor, the town has made great strides in improving its financial condition and communications outreach and environmental leadership. As supervisor, I pledge to continue to run a good, transparent, and accessible government with high-level services and to keep the town's share of property taxes down. I'm committed to addressing the repairs and improvements necessary to the essential infrastructure of the town while also making Mamaroneck more sustainable and resilient by reducing our energy footprint and saving money over the long term. I will work to enhance town communications and public programs to make Mamaroneck an even more enjoyable community. I hope you will go to our newsletter, Facebook page, website, and I hope you will vote on November 7th. For me, and for all the candidates in the town of Mamaroneck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we'll go to you, Ms. Eny.
Thank you. First, I want to thank the League for having us here today. I went into public service to protect the things I love about this town, so it will always be a place for young people to move to, for families to connect with, and for seniors to continue to call home. As a local real estate attorney, I hear firsthand why people come here and what causes them to leave. As a former deputy mayor of the village of Larchmont, I know how important it is to work with our sister villages to share services to save taxpayer dollars. As an almost 40-year resident of this community, I know people across a broad spectrum of the community, and I'm aware of their needs and their perspective. And I'm here 24/7. Now I'm running for my second full term as councilwoman, and I have to tell you, I'm proud to say that the town of Mamaroneck is an open, progressive, and efficient government. In the past few years, we acquired the VFW so the seniors will always have a place to go. We worked on updating our aging infrastructure so our water, sewer, roads, and bridges are safe, enacted legislation to prevent McMansions, renovated our ice rink, engaged in cutting-edge environmental programs, contributed to the preservation of Co-op Camp, enacted policies to protect our residents who are immigrants, and worked on communicating better with you. On the fiscal side, we instituted a policy to restore our surplus reserves so that which were depleted during the Great Recession, and our credit rating was upgraded to AAA. We're always looking for ways to provide services more efficiently to keep taxes down. I'm looking forward to serving for 4 more years to help keep the town of Mamaroneck going forward. And please remember to vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fiddleman?
Thank you. I, too, would like to thank the League for this forum and for making it possible for us to address the community this evening. Thank you all for coming out and for all of you who have tuned in at home. This is the first time I've run for elective office. I have, however, lived in the town of Mamaroneck for over 30 years. I live with my husband, Jeff, and we raised our 3 now adult children here. I've been a volunteer in the community for almost all of those 30 years. I've done many volunteer jobs in the public schools, including serving as president of the Mamaroneck Schools Foundation. I currently volunteer for the local summit, the Hunger Task Force, and a cancer support team. I've served on the board of LMC-TV, the Center for Continuing Ed, and many other organizations. I have long been an observer and a big fan of the town of Mamaroneck government, and I will be proud to serve on its board. I'm looking forward to joining the board and continuing to provide residents with a high level of services while keeping costs in check. I'd like to work toward an even more open and transparent government. And I'd be proud to work with the board to protect our most vulnerable residents, the environment, and to address the issues coming up related to our aging infrastructure. I look forward to performing all the tasks of a board member, including listening to what the community has to say on these and any other issues. In my work in the community and professionally, I have learned to work well in a team. I ask lots of questions. I think I'm a good listener. I understand budgets, and I think I know how to add value. But most importantly, as the other ladies have said, please come out and vote on November 7th.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now, each of you will have a minute and a half to answer the following league questions. Ms. Seligson, we'll start with you. What is the most important infrastructure need in the town, and do we have the resources to address it?
The most important infrastructure issue we have in the town are the sewer pipes and the drinking water pipes. We know that we just spent $5.2 million on a sanitary sewer evaluation study with our sister municipalities, Larchmont, Pelham Manor, and New Rochelle. We just also passed bonding resolutions for $11 million in repairs to the town's sewers. That's going to be spent over 10 years. So yes, we have the resources to do it, but it's expensive, and it's going to hit us in our budget each and every year as we make those repairs. But as I often say, sewers are the foundation of a civilized society. So we have to do it. We can't not do it. And the water infrastructure also needs a great amount of improvement. They're old pipes, old systems. We've got to increase our capacity, and we also are under consent order from the federal government and the state government to actually filter a portion of our water system through Westchester Joint Waterworks. I sit on that board, and yes, we are looking at major projects there as well. So as a collective community, we can look forward to expensive infrastructure repairs, but very, very necessary ones, and we will do them as efficiently as possible with our fellow communities.
Thank you. The next question is for Ms. Eney. What are the major risks for which we need emergency preparedness, and are we prepared?
Thank you. In our community, one of the major risks, I think, is flooding, and that's something that we've experienced. I remember in April of 2007, we had a terrible flood, and many people's homes were destroyed, and it is something that we are addressing. I personally think that it needs to be addressed on a regional basis. The floods don't know where the border is between Scarsdale and Larchmont and White Plains. So, and also the repair solutions are very expensive. So I think it's something that we need to address on a regional basis. I would look to the county, the state, and the federal government to join with us to find solutions on that basis. Here in the town of Mamaroneck, we've enacted some land use legislation to make sure that water is retained on the premises and to avoid, water runoff. And we also have a system through the with the reservoir where we actually, in anticipation of a storm event, we lower the reservoir. It goes through the brook and into the duck pond, and then we lower the duck pond. So when we know a storm event is coming, we can be prepared. So I think that is the major hazard that we faced here. And yes, we are prepared.
Thank you. And the final question will be for Ms. Fiddleman. As a new council member, what will be your budget priorities?
Well, pardon me. Well, I think Nancy spoke very articulately about the water issues that we're dealing with now in the community. The first priority is to manage the sewer infrastructure, its repair, its renovation. And I think that's going to be a very complicated and long-term process for us. The current board has gone out and has already received a grant to help with those repairs, but I think we're going to be facing the challenge of that as a budget item over the course of the next several years. So that's really, I think, the most important priority. I think, just one last thing, actually, you know, it's always an issue. It's not a one-time event, but it's always an issue here, particularly in this part of the country, that we manage the level of taxes that our residents pay, and I think that that's an ongoing issue for the board. I think over the years they've handled it very effectively and efficiently, and I would like to participate in that as well. I have just seen the upcoming 18 budget, and it is under the tax cap, which is a wonderful thing. But I do think that in a time when all costs are constantly increasing, that's an ongoing challenge.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you for participating tonight.
I wish we could do this all night, just the three of us. Thank you.
We're just going to take a 1-minute break to change candidates. Make it very brief.
These are my favorite subjects. And I love your top.
Just freshen up the colors. Fresh water.
He's a great guy. Does a terrific job.
Well, no, I think, not me.
I'll now introduce the candidates for Westchester County Board of Legislators for District 7. First, Catherine Parker, running on the Democratic, Working Families, and Women's Equality Party's tickets, and Norman Rosenblum, running on the Republican, Conservative, and Reform Party's tickets. You will now each have 1.5 minutes to make an opening statement. Please follow the directions from our timekeeper. You'll get a 30-second warning and then the stop sign. We drew lots before the forum, and Ms. Parker will go first.
Thank you. Good evening. Let me start by saying it has been an honor and a pleasure to have served these last 4 years as your county legislator. As you know, I was first elected in 2013, and you overwhelmingly supported my reelection in 2015, and I'm very grateful for that. So let me tell you what's at stake in 2017. And by the way, this is Mayor Rosenblum's and mine 4th debate, so we've been through a little test here, but one of the things that we're going to talk about, I think, are the county finances. And I'm going to tell you that I really think your finances have not been managed very well. You know, the county executive has run saying that he hasn't raised your property taxes, but yet he's borrowed for operating costs. You know, what I've heard from Mayor Rosenblum is that, you know, he will sound like Rob Astorino on that. Westchester County also should not be used to promote gun culture, and I have led the charge to stop using our county center to promote that. When we passed the legislation in January, Rob Astorino vetoed that, and I think you'll hear tonight that on gun shows, Mayor Rosenblum is going to sound like Rob Astorino. I also stood with the Community Resource Center of Mamaroneck on the Immigration Protection Act. And on that, county executive also vetoed our legislation. And I think you'll hear tonight that Mayor Rosenblum is going to sound an awful lot like Rob Astorino. We will get into those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenblum?
Yes, some of you may know me, obviously, as the mayor of the Village of Mamaroneck. My family's been here since 1904. My grandfather came here as a builder. He founded the Hebrew Mutual Aid Society, built the first temple in the Village of Mamaroneck. He also built the first St. Vito's Church in Mamaroneck, which is now the Victoria Lodge. My mother is involved in the community at PTA, a founding member of the Westchester Division of the United Jewish Appeal. My uncle Ruby Serlin was judge in the town of Rye for 28 years. My brother Jim Rosenblum has FDNY Racing NASCAR, raising funds for the FDNY Widows and Children's Fund. My cousin Roger was also a judge in the Village of Mamaroneck for 28 years. My cousin Rabbi Arnold Resnikoff is a retired Navy chaplain who earned a Defense Superior Service Medal for his work with the military, civilian leaders throughout Europe, Africa, and the Mideast. Served as Special Assistant for Values and Vision to the Secretary and Chief of Staff of the Air Force with the equivalent of military rank of Brigadier General. My other cousin, Rabbi David Saperstein, was appointed by President Obama as the U.S. Ambassador at Large for Religious Freedoms and recognized by Newsweek as the most influential rabbi in America. Easy to understand my family's influence on my life's values. My own experience previously as a Village of Mamaroneck trustee, chair of the Tree Committee, member of the Board of Assessment Review of the town of Rye, retired from Safe Flight Instrument Corporation, an avionics manufacturer as a contracts administrator, dealing with sales with U.S. and foreign military, and currently I am the mayor of the Village of Mamaroneck for 8 years, chair of the Westchester Joint Waterworks Board of Trustees, chair of the Board of Control of Mamaroneck Cable Television, and chair of the Mayor's Drug Culture Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will begin the question and answer portion. We've got a few questions from the League of Women Voters and questions from the audience. The first question is from the League of Women Voters. What budgetary issues face the next legislature? And we'll start again with you, Ms. Parker.
Sure. Well, my 3 budgets that I've had before me as part of the Board of Legislators have been very discouraging for municipal finance. I had 6 years prior to being a county legislator where I really learned that you don't borrow for operations. And during the course of Rob Astorino's tenure, he's borrowed almost $140 million for things that are operating costs. And the interest on that, we're going to be paying that for a long time. We have real problems. You know, I mentioned it earlier, that it's a great campaign slogan to say, I haven't raised your property taxes. Less than 2 seconds and you're done. But the fact of the matter is, you've had a property tax increase. It just hasn't been handled honestly. So what we need going forward, and not this year, because this will be, regardless of what happens on November 7th, this will be the county executive's last budget that they will pass. But we will have a real hole that we're gonna have to dig ourselves out of. One of the things that I've pointed to, so not to make it all dire, but one of the things that I've been pointing to for quite a long time is that the county has not really looked at ways of working with the state to get grants to do energy efficiency. And when you see our old buildings without LED lights and all the waste of energy, you know that we could be saving millions of dollars. Those millions will add up over time.
Well, actually, again, the political process does demonstrate difference of opinion. I believe that the process of the Budget Committee on the Westchester County Board of Legislators was done on a bipartisan basis. As a matter of fact, the end of 2016, there was a surplus of $1.5 million. It's always should be looking to help keep all groups in Westchester County, which includes seniors, allowing young people to move in and afford to live here. As a matter of fact, that the Village of Mamaroneck is actually very healthy also, by the way. Also borrowing money, very cheap money, 1% to 2%. As a matter of fact, there's also $140 million unrestricted fund balance available for Westchester County. The 2016 budget added 6 county police, 4 engineering positions with no cuts to bus routes, and so on. In 2017, so far, the collected revenues are above 2.3% And approximately 310 million of the revenue has already been collected. $1 million has also been earmarked for childcare and day, but you want to borrow cheap money, and that's what you do by borrowing money against a particular bonding that's available. I would also note that the creation of 60 North will create 12,000 jobs, 8,000 expected to be permanent, with a projected tax revenue of $9 million. And very quickly, and surmise it, you're better off having people not being able to pay increase in taxes over 8 years and allow them to stay here.
Thank you. Our second question is from audience member Tony Weiner. Can you confirm that you're present? Thank you. This is addressed to both of you. What is your position on the possible privatization of Westchester County Airport? Ms. Parker.
My position is that here again was a gimmick to balance the 2017 budget. We were handed a fait accompli, a deal to privatize the airport that would actually relinquish control from the Board of Legislators to a private equity firm. The deal was front-loaded so that we'd get $15 million, and the $15 million is really important because guess what? We were short $15 million to balance our budget this year. Other than balancing the budget, I really haven't seen a real case for why we would go to privatize the airport. Now, granted, we have a private manager that runs the airport, but we could dismiss that manager tomorrow, and that's it. We will then find somebody else. We will be locked into this deal. And what's at stake? Well, it's a private equity firm, so they're going to be looking to really maximize their investment. And how can they do that? Expansion. So all the talk of saying no expansion, no expansion, no expansion, that's to get everybody to go along with the deal. But I really think, in looking at the master plan and seeing 3 times as many parking garages, seeing that there could be more gates, and knowing that the footprint of Westchester County Airport happens to be the same size as LaGuardia Airport, doesn't that make you a little nervous? So I really haven't seen the case for why we would relinquish that control, and the environmental damage too, considering that the Kensico dam the reservoir is right there, and drinking water for 9 million people. I think that there is way too much at hand. Thank you.
Mr. Rosenblum.
Yeah, the program you're talking about, a privatization, is something that's been offered by the FAA, a group that I've dealt with for the last 31 years working at Safe Flight Industry Corporation. And this program is offered to approximately availability of 10 airports throughout the United States. And the basic concept is a community that isn't necessarily fiscally sound or have a lot of potential revenue, but they do have an airport. They would allow them to privatize the airport and take some of that money out. Right now, if you have an airport, 100% of that money must stay in the airport. The reality is here that as a contracts administrator, I don't particularly like what has been presented because Westchester County obviously is very healthy financially, and it doesn't really fit into, although technically they could be part of this program. However, there are different ways to do that. First of all, we haven't even gotten a contract yet or a specific proposal. But what you can do is go to the FAA. Right now, you have a political atmosphere where Trump's government says that they want to deregulate. The local government is looking to get more funds. So what you do is basically go to the airport and try and negotiate with the FAA and say, look, we have X amount of money that we need to maintain a high-quality operation of the airport. If, say, it's 85%, let us take 15% out and put it into the general fund of the budget. What's coming up in 2023, as a matter of fact, is the end of a sweetheart deal on the parking garage, which equates to $6 million a year. Take that money out.
Thank you. The next question is a league question on the tax cap. What needs, if any, have gone unmet as a result of the tax cap? And this time, we'll let you answer first, Mr. Rosen.
Well, this is for any level of government in New York State. I personally believe that tax cap came about because Governor Cuomo wants to run for President of the United States, and it'll make him look good. What happens is you continue to see it didn't, at NICOM, when you go New York Conference of Mayors, they also are very much against this because you have unfunded mandates coming down from the state. So the state will create a program and then they push it down to the county pushes it down to the local. You are limiting because you have to still maintain the cost of contracts for PBA, for CSEA, and so on. And what you do is you limit the amount of money that's available. The tax cap itself is a disaster. If you go out to California, you can see what the tax cap did. And municipalities have the ability to make a simple vote and override the tax cap. Luckily, as an example, in the village of Mamaroneck, we voted to override it, but we didn't have to. But a school must get 60%. Otherwise, they get nothing. And California, you can see the result of that is they destroyed the education system. And that's what's coming very close to this community, Westchester County. You look at your school taxes right now, you're going to have to start overriding it. Otherwise, you're going to affect the quality of education, and you're also going to affect the quality of what municipalities can do. It's not a good idea.
Thank you. Parker.
Well, Mayor, let me tell you about county government. A tax cap actually sounds like you've been living large. Most municipalities have been trying to live within a tax cap. That's for most years, let's just use the 2% increase. Well, that's not how Westchester's been handling their budgets. No, zero tax increase since we've had Rob Astorino as the county executive. How is he so brilliant? You haven't been able to do it. Nancy Seligson hasn't been able to do it. Nobody's been able to do it. So how is he doing it? He's doing it because he's borrowing for operations. Now, you mentioned borrowing before, and you were talking about borrowing for capital, and I agree with you. Right now is a great time to borrow for your capital infrastructure improvements. But boy, why in heck would you borrow for things that you should be able to justify in your revenues for this year? And that's what's wrong with what's happening at Westchester County. So tax cap sounds like a really interesting idea for Westchester, but that's not what's going on here at all. Instead, we're doing all sorts of tricks, and again, by this quote-unquote bipartisan coalition that's actually just the enablers of Rob Astorino. They get together, they basically rubber stamp these budgets, rubber stamp the line that they haven't raised your taxes, and again, they just borrowed all the money, $11 million for pension costs, borrowed $1 million for cars, borrowed $1 million for IT. They just keep borrowing for things that should automatically be coming out of your operating revenue.
Thank you. We have a question here from Fran Snedeker. Thank you. I believe this is directed to Ms. Parker. Okay. You chose to vote against the budget which Astorino presented last December to the county legislature. It did not contain any provision for raising county taxes. What about the budget displeased you so severely?
Well, I can talk about this a little bit more. You know, again, I'll laugh because it's a third budget question, but in truth, it's very sad to me that I haven't had one budget for Westchester County that I have felt in good conscience my constituents would want me to support. And really, at the end of the day, you entrust in me my fiduciary responsibility. And I just am not gonna, you know, go with the whole smoke and mirrors trick that the county executive has been doing for his entire time. So I didn't vote for it. You know, there was a great article. You don't even have to take my word for it, but if you look up Westchester County and road to perdition, you know, road to perdition, road to hell, there was a great article in the Journal News that really gave a very clear picture of what's wrong with the county budget process. And Chairman Kaplowitz had said, we are on the road to financial perdition. Yet he was actually really instrumental in passing this flim-flam budget. You know, I want to see real, you know, really getting out the pen and paper and really figuring out the numbers. You know, let's look at tax parity. Let's look and see if there's other sources of revenue. Yes, we passed North 60 this year. That is a start. But as I mentioned to you, we have a lot of debt that somehow, on somebody's dime, we're going to have to pay back.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenblum, would you like to answer?
Well, actually, again, we disagree. I think that The county is very healthy on this. It's obviously just by the $140 million fund that's available. But talking about the process, I agree. The important part, and what's the same problem on the county level is throughout this entire country, and that is people talking at each other instead of to each other. The fact of the matter is that this coalition created the first time that a budget has been passed on time. And I find it interesting that Catherine tried to pull a coup and destroy this by replacing Kaplowitz as the head, as the chair of the board. But even more important than that is you're talking about participating in the process of the budget. In 2016, Catherine missed 56 meetings for the Budget Committee. In 2017 to date, she missed 10 of 32 meetings. That's not how to handle and express yourself and have input into the Budget Committee. When I am on that board, I will have better presentation and participation. Thank you.
Okay, we have another league question. Should the county allow the use of its space for gun shows? We'll start with you, Mr. Rosenblum.
Oh, absolutely. I think that specifically as far as the gun show is concerned, there are two levels to this. In 2013, New York State passed a Safe Act show, which is State Safe Act, which is the strongest gun control in the United States. Also, New York State Attorney General Eric Schneiderman developed, quote, the model New York gun show procedure. The Westchester County Public Safety Committee publicly stated gun shows may be conducted safely in the county center. Anyone that goes to this, of the 8,000 people, if they do purchase a gun, they have to have an immediate NICES check to make sure that they are entitled to do it. The other action that came up, people were talking about, which was Nazi paraphernalia and other right wing. That is not part of a gun show, and you don't have to do that as part of the gun show. But beware of the slippery slope. It's not just the fact that it's a gun show. The fact of the matter is you have a constitutional right, you have rules and regulations that allow the gun show to exist. As an example, where do you go? 50,000 people a year die on the roads in the United States. Does that mean you're not going to have a auto show? You have people die every day. Hopefully this subject will come up from the opiate epidemic. Does not mean you're not going to have you're going to ban health shows. What needs to be addressed are the multiple aspects, such as multiple interests, manufacturing technologies that prevent it, technologies and vetting. But it's not limited just to a gun show. It's any show that goes into Westchester County.
Thank you.
You bet that I believe that gun shows do not belong at our municipal building. And I can tell you, after what happened in Las Vegas and reading about the bump stock that was used that allowed this crazy person to take out so many people, guess what? Bump stocks will be at the next gun show at the Westchester County Center, as well as, again, Nazi paraphernalia, Confederate flags. Why in God's name would we allow our municipal building to promote this craziness? We would not do that. We have to stand up and have a little bit of backbone and say, you know what, gun show people, we don't need your $28,000. We're going to do another, how about a chocolate show? I don't know, something good, right? Not a gun show. And it's not even a Second Amendment issue. You're entitled to get your guns, go get them somewhere else. You can even have a gun show on private property. But why use our municipal building? It makes absolutely no sense. And I've called for the vote to override the county executive's veto. I think it's really important that at this point in time, you know where your legislator stands, but sadly, there are legislators in Westchester County that did not vote originally back in January to prohibit the gun shows. And I think that their constituents really need to hear from them. Again, after what happened in Las Vegas, how anybody could support a gun show at the Westchester County Center, I'll never understand.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you to hold your applause, please. This is a question on immigration. What should be the relationship between Westchester County's law enforcement and the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency? So we'll start with you, Ms.
Yes. So when Andy Spano was county executive, he had, by executive order, basically laid out a set of rules for our county police to deal with our federal immigration officers. And it was pretty good. You know, given what our current president announced this year, earlier in the year, we felt very strongly that it was time that we really codified what we already had on the books. And working with Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, and also lawyers that work with the immigration community, we felt it was in everybody's best interest to ensure that when there were police involved, that, again, we were respectful of the fact of the Constitution, federal laws, but that we were very defined as to the ability for them to do their jobs and keep people safe. And we also did this with the thought that, look, there could be somebody here in our community that's working towards attaining citizenship. They could be a witness to a crime. And if they see a crime, we don't want them to not call the police because they're afraid that's going to get them caught up in an immigration net. So it was very important legislation. I was very proud that we passed it. I was one of the co-sponsors. And again, the county executive vetoed that legislation. I mentioned earlier that the Community Resource Center of Mamaroneck, you know, they were one of the advocates that called on the board to pass this legislation. I stood with them.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenblum?
Thank you. I believe I was one of the first, if not the first, elected official in December or January to come out with a policy that actually enforced what's been in a policy for the Village of Mamaroneck for the past 8 years since I've been mayor, and that is, one, we are not an agent of the federal government. We are not an agent of ICE. Nothing has changed in the Village of Mamaroneck. The only group that has to worry are those that are criminals. There is a reason why you want to work with the federal government. We are a nation of rules and regulations. You're not looking to protect those that break the law, and that's simply what it is. As a very quick example, working with the Community Resource Center, there was something in the Village of Mamaroneck called a taco roll, and that's because those people that were either undocumented or in similar situations, they would walk around with cash because they couldn't open a bank account. We worked very closely with the Hispanic Resource Center at that time, which is now the Community Resource Center, and we were able to work with banks to be able to open that up. But the fact of the matter is that nothing has changed. And I would also note that every police department in Westchester County agreed with Astorino's veto, as I do.
Thank you. The next question is from Thomas Lavin. Sorry. Thank you. This is to both of the candidates. What is your position on the holding of a New York State Constitutional Convention? We'll start with you.
I am dead set against it. There's a reason why you have a constitutional convention that's allowed, but the fact of the matter is, as noted eloquently before by the Mamaroneck High School student, it's an unknown factor. You don't know what's going to be there. I believe that New York City will control it 100%. You have 3 potential delegates from each Senate seat, which right away gives New York City the power. There are questions that you don't know what's going to be there. And the fact of the matter is that if you address certain things, like as your municipal leader, you worry about pensions and the cost of health insurance and so on. You can do that 2 ways. You can do it, one, by negotiation, which, as an example, in the Village of Mamaroneck, we've done very successfully with both the PBA and the CSEA. And then you can move by state, in the state legislature, by changing it. Do not open it up. Aside from the obvious corruption that's in New York State, it is something that's not necessary, and don't open up a Pandora's box for something that's unknown. And the fact of the matter is, the last one, it was not successful, and the reason it wasn't successful is it cost the state $350 million. And whatever was done, it was brought to the voters, and voters turned everything down. It's just not necessary. It's a waste of time and money.
Thank you. Ms. Parker?
Yes, I too am against it. I think, you know, Jackson Bear said it well, the student that was up here. It's very expensive. I think that there's a more efficient way to pass some legislation that would, I would look to see, again, you know, protective legislation for women's rights and a lot of environmental issues, and I really think that that's the way to go. I'm concerned, too, after reading the story in the news today about Robert Mercer and the money that he's actually pouring into this county executive race to help Rob Astorino. I mean, we know that there will be money that will get funneled, you know, again, to influence on the con. That's what they call the Constitutional Convention. So I really think it's a slippery slope, and we could really be going down the wrong path.
Thank you. The next question is on emergency preparedness. What are the major risks for which we need emergency preparedness, and are we prepared? We'll start with you, Ms. Parker.
Sure. Well, it's interesting. I actually chair the county's Energy and Regional Efficiencies Committee, and earlier this year I vetted the current county hazard mitigation plan, all 1,268 pages of it. And one of the most striking things about that plan was that there was nothing in relation to Indian Point, which I found really amazing. Now, not just Indian Point, but we also potentially will have a gas line that is being expanded, the AIM gas line, that is going right by Indian Point, and again, no mention of that. So let's talk about what was mentioned. And yes, just as Councilwoman Eni had said before, that we need in this area, certainly flooding is critical. We actually at the county do have a lot of help that we can offer to the municipalities on that. And in fact, that was a large part of what our meeting was focused on. So we not only have training that we do at the county that helps the local municipalities prepare for those events, but then we also have sort of the bigger toys that we can bring down and again really help residents when there's a critical event.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenblatt?
As the expression goes, God helps those that help themselves. The Village of Mamaroneck was one of the first in Westchester County to complete an all-hazard mitigation plan, which allowed for applications for the village on behalf of individuals that so wish to raise their houses in flooding. Flooding obviously is very important in the Village of Mamaroneck, and as a matter of fact, the entire Sound Shore area. The Village of Mamaroneck is in a very successful position right now. We've completed the Army Corps of Engineers first phase. Next step is waiting for the $86 million from Congress, which I was able to go down to Washington with Trustee Tafur and Trustee Potok, made a very complete presentation, which was accepted by the Army Corps of Engineers, and they are pushing forward on that. Ironically, the Westchester County is now working with the Village of Mamaroneck to expand their plan along with the Village of Mamaroneck, and this will be potential for the entire district. There's also an aspect that's not been brought up, and that is Homeland Security. We are very part of the potential danger of the #1 terrorist, which is New York City, and we're part of New York City. You have to work with part of that plan is a coordinated effort, which I believe is now in effect with Westchester County DA's office, the Westchester County Department of Security, New York City, and Homeland Security.
Thank you. The next question is about drug abuse. How should the county legislature address the opioid crisis? Mr. Rosenblatt?
My favorite subject. I believe that this is the single greatest threat to our society, not only Westchester County, the Village of Mamaroneck, but the entire United States. I started over 2 years ago the Mayor's Drug Culture Committee, comprised of members of the District Attorney's Office, the county judges, local judges, the schools, and including, unfortunately, parents that have lost their children and some of the students. It's a matter of funding and creating programs. There is available right now $200 million that have been allocated by New York State. I've been working with Senator Terrence Murphy to get some of these funds down here. There are two basic levels and two approaches. One is those that are already addicted. You have to have programs for them. They also, quite honestly, have to want to do it, otherwise you're just wasting your time. But I think the real key is not those that are addicted as much as those that have to make a choice or will be making a choice. You have to address the kids in high schools. You have to go to the lower schools also. You can go to any school in this country. You can go to the Hommocks. You can go in any place in Rhinebeck. there are drugs available, and the kids could tell you do it. There's a Skittle party. Kids go to the party, they'll dump all kinds of pills in, they'll take any pill and they'll take a drink. You have to give them education. You have to give them tools to make common sense approach, not to get involved with gateway drugs, such as smoking, alcohol, and marijuana. Not every kid that does it, but those that are subject will do it. And I say to the parents, talk to your kids, talk to your teachers, communicate with them. Don't believe that it's not my kid. It can be your kid. Village of Mamaroneck unfortunately had 6 OD deaths last year.
Thank you. Ms. Parker?
Sure. I will say this is one area where I think Mayor Rosenblum has done a very good job for the community on that. And I, too, have been working on unfortunately, the terrible opioid epidemic. So one step that we just took very recently at the Board of Legislators is that we voted to join a lawsuit against the pharmaceutical companies. Now, why do we want to do that? Well, we want to encourage education and treatment, but that costs a lot of money. So why shouldn't the pharmaceutical companies that are pushing these opioids on the streets, why shouldn't they help us pay for what we're going to have to do to take care of the problem that they have really helped create? And this is just like the back in the 80s when the county sued the tobacco companies, and we receive significant dollars from the tobacco companies still to this day. So this is truthfully following that, and what we need to do is focus that money on I think a regional treatment center here in southern Westchester. It's been in our budget books for the last couple of years. We haven't done it. I really think that that's what we absolutely need to do. And then I also think, again, it's a question of education. So the health department recently held for any of the legislators who wanted it to do it in any of our communities, I sent something out, and Harrison took me up on my offer, and I think the city of Rye took me up on the offer as well. We did provided the Narcan kits, and the health department had somebody on site to walk people through how to use Narcan if you were with somebody who has been experiencing an overdose. And I actually heard from some people, I sent it as an e-blast to all my constituents, and I heard from some people that they thought it was really helpful.
Thank you. What ideas do you have to attract businesses to Westchester? Start with you, Ms. Parker.
Sure. So let's go back to North 60. So and for anyone who doesn't know, North 60 is in Valhalla. And it's 60 acres of undeveloped land that Westchester County has been sitting with for many, many, many years. And it's right by the Westchester Medical Center, the county jail, community college. And there's also some other medical industry that's happening there. So we were approached by a developer who said, I want to buy or lease for 100 years, which is basically buy, your 60 acres. I have 20 acres next door. We're going to do a huge biotech regional, really make this a regional emphasis for Westchester County. And again, what the revenue would be, $7 million, which would be annual rent. And then once we have the businesses coming in, well, then they'll also have people there'll be some businesses there as well, and we'll get sales tax of about $6 million. So $13 million a year sounds pretty terrific. Now, we didn't just go by what the developer was saying. We actually he paid for us to hire a consultant to go out and kind of explore what biotech, if we could actually do this and succeed, because there have been some biotech that have, other places have tried this, and they're left with empty space. So we heard from our consultant that actually this would be an excellent place to do it. Regeneron's there. There's lots of other opportunity, and I think will really help economic development.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenblum.
Well, economic development is a part and parcel of any municipality, and Westchester County has different divisions to do it. Parallel is what we're doing in the Village of Mamaroneck in the industrial area. First, you have to go out and identify what you want to do and have allowable uses by zoning. But the fact of the matter is, even when you do the zoning, you have available uses, what you have to go out and find out what companies and what they're looking for in the area. Right now, you have the bioscience, you have technology. That seems to be the leading thing. As an example, Wegmans, one of the largest stores, is moving into the Miracle Mile, or Platinum Mile, by Harrison. And that's exactly what you have to do. The fact of the matter is that one of the reasons that you will be successful is that you do control the budget. You are available to go out and offer people some kind of tax breaks to come in. As example, the one development that we were just talking about, the North 60, as I noted before, you'll have 12,000 jobs, 8,000 jobs expected to be permanent, and you will have several millions of dollars going into the general fund of the county.
Thank you both. The question and answer period is now closed. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to make a closing statement, so we'll go back to you, Ms. Parker.
Sure. Let me start by saying thank you to the League of Women Voters of Larchmont and Mamaroneck for holding this forum. And thank you to those in the audience. I love to see a full room here. And actually, those that are watching at home, I think this is really great. I've had an actually really good time tonight. So let me say that I am the Democratic candidate and Norm is the Republican candidate. But, you know, really, I think as we've talked about the budget, only one of us can really make the case that they're a fiscal conservative. And I think borrowing for operating costs kind of negates Mayor Rosenblum's claim on that. And in fact, it kind of makes him sound like Rob Astorino. And then, you know, you may be a Republican or a Democrat or independent, whatever you are. I bet you agree with me, gun shows don't belong on our municipal property. And only one of us is going to stand for your values on smart gun legislation. And Norm sounds a lot like Rob Astorino on that. So also, I know from our previous debates, I was waiting for this to come up. You're going to maybe save it for the closing. You're going to say that because you live in Mamaroneck, you know, he'll make a better county legislator for you. And I have to say, but I stood with the Community Resource Center of Mamaroneck on the Immigration Protection Act. So no, I think I got that one too. And Norm sounds a lot like Rob Astorino. I would be honored to have your support for a third term, and I'm very serious about that. I also will ask all of you, please get your friends to get out and vote on November 7th. This is a very important election, and vote for George Latimer. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Please hold your applause, Mr.
As I
Rosenblum.
find it very ironic that I will say that this is a lot more civil than last night's debate, but I also find that it's ironic that the county executive debate trying to compare Trump. And over now, on the county legislative District 7, you're trying to compare myself to Rob Astorino. The fact of the matter is I'm not running against anyone. I am running for a position, the county legislator. And the fact of the matter also is that that is the legislative branch, not the executive branch. Anyone has to look at any meeting, any policy I've done in the village of Mamaroneck. I am no one's tool. I have my own mind to make up. I will make up my mind as to what I believe is the best for the District 7 in all the communities. But I would note philosophically, and this is what you do, I think anyone is just as capable as being mayor of the village of Mamaroneck, anything else. You only have to have one idea in mind. When a question comes before you, what do you think is best for your community? And it goes back to, as in my opening statement, I can tell you that the most important person in my life, as far as philosophy is concerned, is my mother. She always said the most important thing you have is your family. Then you have the extended family, your cousins, and then you have your community. And that's what I've done for the last 20 years since I was a trustee in 1980, and I'm looking only for one thing: what's best for the Sound Shore area in District 7. God bless America, and thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Norm.
Thank you both very much.
Okay, so another 1 moment break for our Village of Mamaroneck mayoral candidates.
I'll now introduce the candidates for Village of Mamaroneck Mayor. Mr. George Megardishian, running on the Republican, Conservative, Independence, and Reform Parties tickets, and Mr. Thomas Murphy, running on the Democratic, Working Families, and Responsible Development Parties tickets. You will now each have a minute and a half to make an opening statement. Please follow the directions from our timekeeper. You'll get a 30-second warning and then the stop sign.
Kind of missing the timekeeper.
Ooh, we are missing our timekeeper.
It's okay.
Uh,
I can deal with that. I'll keep my own time. Go ahead.
Okay. We drew lots, and Mr. Megardishian will go first. Oh, and she's back. So please go ahead. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is George Megardishian. I'm running for mayor in the Village of Mamaroneck. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for sponsoring the debate. I want to thank LMC-TV for its live broadcast and the rerunning of the debate for our residents. And I want to thank our residents for taking out the time in their busy schedules to hear what Tom and I have to say on the issues concerning our village. I've been a resident of the Village of Mamaroneck for 34 years, and my wife Joanne and I have raised our twin sons, and I have loved living here for all these years. I am a general contractor, and I have extensive experience in both municipal and private sectors. I have served on a ZBA for 10 years as its secretary, and I've served on Mamaroneck Shares Board. I've been the Republican Party chair in the past. Currently, I'm on the Historical Society. I am the former treasurer of the Oriental Point Association, and now the current president of the association for the past 3 years. I am also the marshal for the Village of Mamaroneck. I am running for mayor of the Village of Mamaroneck because I believe I can bring about positive change to the village. The change that has been spoken about but never implemented. I have spent many years participating and learning by participating before our boards and commissions and interacting with our building department and understanding how our village works and where productive change can be brought about. Between my background in business and my experience in municipal contracting, I understand budgets, finance, and reading of contracts and project administration. I bring a unique skill set to the Village of Mamaroneck as I am self-employed. I have the flexibility of controlling my time and will dedicate an enormous amount of that time to the village. I commit to you, the residents, that my #1 concern will be to make the Village of Mamaroneck, in conjunction with my fellow board members, the best it can possibly be. We will be more transparent, meetings will be more friendly and welcoming to the residents. We will be more fiscally responsible, more developmentally responsible, and I'm going to stop.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy, your opening statement.
Yes, good evening. I want to thank the League for hosting this forum. I moved to Mamaroneck in 1990 to raise a family. We picked the village for the schools, the walkability of the community, and its unique character. It had a small town feel with a diverse population. Recently, many of us have noticed Mamaroneck is losing its small town feel. Residents are worried that overdevelopment is changing the character of our village. When I was a trustee from 2004 to 2009, I worked hard to put the needs of residents before the wants of outside developers. I empowered residents to stay informed on land use issues by televising zoning and planning board meetings. We changed zoning laws to try and limit overdevelopment. We required greater notice of neighbors when new projects were proposed. In my recent public service on the town board, we worked to limit out-of-character development in our community, McMansions. I have had proven success and practical experience on the land use issues that now vex Mamaroneck. On both the town and village boards, I've worked hard to control spending and taxes.
During my village tenure, we hired a full-time village attorney to control legal costs. We should again hire an attorney whose main concern is just the Village of Mamaroneck taxpayers. I have experience negotiating and settling divisive litigation, such as the day school case. I am ready to be mayor on day one. Being mayor is a challenging and demanding position. There is no time to learn on a job. The mayor is not an entry-level position.
Thank you. We'll now begin the question and answer portion with a few questions from the League of Women Voters and then questions from the audience. Again, you will have a minute and a half to answer each question. What improvements, if any, do you feel are needed in the management of village government departments? We'll start with you, Mr. Murphy.
Well, I think the most, walking around and watching the village board meetings and the land use board meetings, the department with the most turnover and that needs the most attention right now is the building department. I hear from almost everyone who has had contact with the building department as I walk around the village and talk to people that they had had concerns, that they had had difficulties. You know, your building department, you know, is besides your police department and your fire department, they're there to protect your safety, life, and health. And if they don't work properly, you know, your community doesn't function properly. You know, I learned after the floods in 2007 how important the building department was. When people need to get back into their homes, when people need to have repairs done in a timely manner, you need to be there and you need to respond. And you know what, we need to have a building department that is second to none. We have a lot of building going on in this community. And you know, there's a lot of different developments going up. And I've worked in construction my whole life. I work for a contractor who does construction. And I can tell you from experience, if you don't watch them, and if you're not on top of them, they will take advantage of you every step of the way. And we don't want that happening in this community. We want to have development happen, and when it happens, to have we control it, not it control us. So I think, you know, we have to look at every department, and I want to empower the employees to be able to come to us with suggestions on how to do a better job, because I think our employees have a lot of information that is locked up, and you know, they want to do the good job. They want to, you know, be productive people and come to work and make this a better village, and we have to unlock that potential.
Thank you. Mr. Megardishian?
I would agree with my opponent. I think the building department is one of our issues in this village. We should know that we've lost 8 building inspectors over about an 8-year period, and I've known every one of them. It's unfortunate that this village can't hold on to a building inspector in our community. And it's sad also because we can't even get qualified building inspectors to come and want to come to our village because they're all afraid. They're afraid of interference from departments. They're concerned about trustees intervening in their day-to-day business. The building department needs to stay on point. They are a separate entity of this village, and they do not belong getting involved, or the village officials have no business getting involved. That's one area. We have other issues in this village other than our building department. I think that our public works department also needs to be addressed. They also seem to be a little bit confused. We now have a head of a public works department, and we have a superintendent below him and an assistant superintendent below him, and they're having a little hard time getting direction and not sure who to go to. I think we need to clarify a little bit of that, and I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question. What is your vision for development in the transit-oriented development area, including environmental issues and the impact on the Washingtonville area? We'll start with you, Mr. Megardishian.
Well, the TOD was something enacted by the board several years ago, and there have been quite a few residents actually have been against it. There's a serious impact on the Washingtonville neighborhoods. The biggest concern right now that's happening on Mamaroneck Avenue is traffic. That's a serious issue for everybody in this village. You know, in the morning, it'll take you, at peak hour, at 8 o'clock, it'll take you 20 minutes to get from the bridge to the 95 at peak morning. And that traffic is huge. The residents in Washingtonville right now and in the flats are being choked. They have no room to move. Their cars are parked side by side in tight spaces. There are cars coming in through other areas of the community that are passing through the Village of Mamaroneck. There really is no room left in that area. The development that's going on in this transit-orient development, this TOD program that's going on, is actually increasing quite a few residences as well as buildings. And what that's doing is it's increasing more traffic. It's impacting the Washingtonville area, the Flats area, throughout that whole area of Mamaroneck, everything past the train tracks. And I think that's something that needs to be looked at seriously. I think that the board needs to address the concerns of those residents. They've been pretty much left, alone for quite some time.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
I think the TOD was a good idea that was poorly executed. What the board failed to do when they originally changed the zoning, which you should do every time you change zoning, and I've changed zonings both as a Town of Mamaroneck board member and as a Village of Mamaroneck trustee, you have to do a general environmental impact statement. And what that allows you to do is take a look at the whole area and to see how you would, what the whole area could take in terms of development, and how do you limit that area, and how do you, do a traffic study to see, as George pointed out, how people are going to move, and if this is completely built out, how will people get through the streets? How will the sewer system fare? How will the electrical grid fare? None of this was done. So now what you have is you have piecemeal development. You have somebody building a building, and that building itself might not reach the threshold of having to do an environmental impact statement, so they get away with it. And then the next building gets away with it. And there was never a view of the whole area and how it would affect everybody in that area. And I think that that's important going forward, is to know how to do zoning changes, and to know that what you do over here affects somebody over here. And the schools right now are inundated. The schools have over 500 more students than they had projected they were going to have. And that's something that, while it might not be your Village and Mamaroneck taxes, affects all of our taxes. Well, when they have to start building new classrooms and hiring more teachers, and your school taxes go up, which is more than half of your tax bill, it's going to hurt everybody.
Thank you. What should be the relationship between village law enforcement and the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency? Should we or should we not be a sanctuary village? We'll start with you, Mr. Murphy.
A sanctuary village is just a term that the right wing came up with when you didn't want to become ICE members. It's really a fallacy. What the village has done, as the mayor pointed out, and we did under my tenure when I was there as a trustee, is, the village police enforce the laws of New York State and the penal code. The federal government enforces the immigration law, just like the federal government enforces, the laws upon the water with the Coast Guard, and the village doesn't do that. We have a responsibility to have people who live in this community be able to report crimes, to be able to be witnesses in crimes. And when those people feel that they can't approach the police in an open manner, then crime spirals because it's not getting reported, and the person who's actually the criminal gets away with it. If a person feels like, if I report a crime and maybe my parents will get deported, they're going to keep their mouth shut. And that's what criminals like. Criminals like communities that keep their mouth shut. And the federal government can enforce the immigration law. If we arrest somebody and the federal government says, oh, I have a court order or to have that person, then you release the person, but under a court order. You don't become, the Village of Mamaroneck Police, the Town of Mamaroneck Police, they have enough to do with keeping us safe. One of the reasons I moved into this community was because the quick response of the police department. I grew up in New York City where you could wait a half hour for a cop. In Mamaroneck, you get a cop within a minute, and I'm willing to pay taxes to have that.
Thank you. Mr. Megardishian?
In fact, that this village is considered a sanctuary city. I don't believe it to be a right-wing comment coming from somewhere else. What I believe is that the village is following a specific set of laws. I believe that it protects all of its residents, whether they are legal or illegal, with respect to if there's a crime committed, the police will address it. If there's no crime committed, the residents, any resident has the right to go to any police officer, ask any question, or report any crime. If they're not feeling the ability to do that, then they're being misinformed. They should be able to, at any given time, go to a police officer or anybody of authority and be able to report something in their neighborhood. If they're not, again, as I say, there's good reason for it. They don't want to report the crime. They don't want to tell about their friend. But nobody is actually doing anything inappropriate to, to any of these people that are living in our village. I happen to respect them all. I've actually knocked on numerous doors in the Washingtonville area where you'll find a majority of minorities living 2 and 3 in an apartment, and they were very welcome. They were very kind to me and my running mate when we knocked on their doors, and we're very pleased to see people from the village, walking through their area. So as far as that's concerned, I don't think that that's an issue with respect to that. And as far as our police time is concerned, yes, our police respond very quickly. But don't forget, we're 3.5 square miles of village here. We have 5 to 6 police officers patrolling, and they can come at any given time very shortly, quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Kathleen Savolt. Thank you. This is addressed to both of you. Traffic and congestion are always a problem in the village. Development is expected to come online soon. Thank you. What is your position on additional development in the village? And we'll start with you, Mr. Megadishian.
Well, you're right, Catherine. Traffic is a very big issue in this village, and it has me concerned as well. So traffic in this village starts predominantly on Mamaroneck Avenue. The overbuilding that has been going on for quite some time now, for the last several years, has been a real issue. These buildings that are going up, for example, the one that's going up behind Bellotta Kitchens, which is 90 units, if there are 2 residents in each, that's 180 people, that's 180 cars potentially. That's an issue for me. There is another one that's going up where the old Mexican restaurant was. I believe there's over 20 units going in there. When you start adding up all this, traffic is a serious issue in our village, and it's not being addressed. So all this overdevelopment that's going on in the village is certainly not appropriate. We need planned development. We need development that's been studied. We need development that people will look at and say, okay, this has an impact on our community. We don't deserve to be building this at this time. We need to look at alternatives. We have to look at the other residents that live in the community, for example, Washingtonville, where they're going to get the most impact from a development such as the one that's being built behind Bellotta Kitchens. And I think that at the end of the day, we need to address that through our zoning laws and planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy.
I think the first thing the village needs to do is revise the master plan. We need a master plan that once again reflects the will of the community. Too often, what I've seen happen in the village lately is that zoning has been changed because of one single development, and not seeing how that's going to affect other developments in other areas. We can't have developers come in and pick and choose the laws they want and get to change them willy-nilly. Either the law means something or it means nothing. And, we have to be a society of laws. And the zoning laws are in effect to protect us all. They're to protect our quality of life. That's why they are enacted. And we need a leader and a board of trustees who has a history of, having gone through zoning changes and having, elicited information from the public and listened to the public, and then been able to put that information into a law, and hopefully that limited development in some ways. When I was on the board of trustees, George mentions the development behind Bellotta's. I voted no on that. I was the lone vote to vote no on it because I really didn't think that the community could stand it, and I still don't. I think that Waverly Avenue is impossible to get down on a good day. And, to put 90 more units in that intersection is insanity, and I don't see how it's ever going to work.
Thank you.
Can I rebut on that by chance?
No, I'm sorry, we're not doing rebuttals, but. The next question is from Meg Jurgen. Thank you. Okay, this is to both of you. Please tell us of any conflicts of interest you may have if you're elected mayor. Tom is committed to his union. Will that affect contract negotiations? George, you and your son are in the building development business, and you've had village contracts and bid on village contracts in the past. Will you and your son refrain from bidding on contracts while you are mayor? We'll start with you, Mr. Murphy.
I am a proud union member. I've been a union member since 1980. As an aside, I'm voting no on the Constitutional Convention because I think that it would be a terrible thing for working people. But I have been involved in village negotiations. I've been involved in town negotiations and voting on contracts and approving contracts. I believe in unions, and I believe in their right to negotiate. But I also believe when you're on the other side, you have a fiduciary responsibility to protect the taxpayers who you represent. And I believe I've done that, and I believe our employees have gotten fair contracts that value who they are and value their work, but that protected the pocketbooks of the men and women who pay taxes in this community. And I think that it's not a contradiction to say, I want my workers to be rewarded for the work they do, and I want my taxpayers to be protected. Because when you have happy workers, they'll serve your taxpayers better. And as far as any other conflicts of interest, I've worked in New York City for 32 years. I figure I probably have another 10 years left to work in New York City. I didn't do my planning that well, but I will never work in the Village of Mamaroneck. My company doesn't do any work. They do high-rise, high-speed elevator construction and repair in New York City, and it's really not a market we've ever been interested in. Is Westchester County, but the only asset I have in the village is the apartment I own.
Thank you. Mr. Megardishian?
So yes, you're right. I do heavy construction, municipal work, and residential mixed use. The amount of work that I've done in this village in the past, well, first let me say that I would certainly recuse myself, without a doubt, not even thinking twice about it. But that being said, yes, I do that kind of work, and I've done very minimal amount of work in the Village of Mamaroneck. In fact, I've come in and done the village some very, very favorable favors at very low-cost savings just to accommodate the village because the numbers were so far out of line. And favorably, I did it for them as a favor, and you could ask the few departments that I did do it for, and they'll be happy to give you that answer. Yes, I will recuse myself. Yes, my son is an electrician. He has his own business currently, just began a few years ago. He does some work in the Village of Mamaroneck, not because of me, but because he has clients. I can't stop him from bidding on a residential project. He does not do commercial work. He does only residential. And as far as myself is concerned, I haven't done a substantial commercial project in this village in 34 years, actually, since I've lived here.
Thank you. What role should the village play in addressing the opioid crisis? We'll start with you, Mr. Megardishian.
Well, the opioid issue is a very serious problem across the board, not only for the Village of Mamaroneck, but the entire country. I attended a summit board meeting, actually, in June of this past year, and was very interesting, very educational. Unfortunately, there has not been one since then. But it was interesting that people got up and spoke who were previously addicted, who had issues, or family members who had issues, and unfortunately ended up in death, which I was very saddened by. I wanted to get further involved in it. I didn't get any additional information thereafter. That being said, with respect to the village should take a more active position. My running mate and I have said already, and we've talked about this, that we will bring our message door to door if we have to. The way we've walked this village from door to door, introducing ourselves, telling people who we are, we will go door to door and preach to the parents if we have to let them know this is what's happening, this is how you'll have to address it. We will get the schools to come with us if we have to, but we will do it ourselves.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
My first experience with opioids, I remember being 5 years old and being outside the church where my family went in the city, and one of the mothers was crying, and the other mother was comforting her, my mother and the other mothers, and they were talking about this older kid ODing. And I remember asking my father what ODing meant, and he explained to me that it was about drugs and, how bad they were. And, I can't even count the number of kids in my neighborhood growing up that passed because of opioid addiction. And then I moved up to Mamaroneck, and in the last few years, the scourge seems to have come up here, and it's taken a lot of people, and it's taken a lot of people in my union who I work with, all good people from good families. It's an addiction. It's a disease. We cannot arrest our way out of it. We cannot jail our way out of it. We have to start looking at it as a mental health problem that needs to be treated on a lot of different levels. I think that we should bring in the town of Mamaroneck, we should bring in the village of Larchmont, and all the communities around here, and get the mental health professionals involved. And when a person gets arrested for a nonviolent crime that's drug-related, we should try and get them in treatment right away, because it's important when there's a crisis in an addict's life to get them into treatment immediately, because then they're ready. If you don't have a bed in tell them to have a bed in 2 or 3 days, they're off, they're in the wind. You have to strike while the iron is hot. I've seen success stories, I've seen great success stories, but as the mayor said, you have to want to quit, but there also has to be opportunity when you want to quit, and we have to give them the opportunity to quit.
Thank you. The next question is from Celia Felsher. Thank you. This is for both candidates. Do you think the board and the village generally operate in a sufficiently transparent way? If not, how would you like to see transparency increased? Mr. Murphy?
Well, I think the first thing I would do, and try and convince the rest of the board to do, is to start televising the work sessions. I think in the work sessions, a lot of the meat and potatoes of what goes on in a village or any community happens. There is a problem with trust, not just in the village of Mamaroneck government, with all governments in general. And I think it's the only way we're going to fix the lack of faith that people have in government is by completely opening up the process. As I campaign, it's disheartening to hear people say, I don't vote, I don't believe, it doesn't change anything. And, that's just heartbreaking, because it does change things. And, we could start changing things today by, allowing people to come to the meetings and being treated with kindness and respect. There's no reason to have anger and discord on the Board of Trustees. I'll tell you a story. When I was first elected, I got into a heated discussion, shall we say, with a couple of the other trustees, and I felt very proud, and I thought I did well, and I got a call from a man named Ken Simon, who some of you may remember, who is a Village of Mamaroneck resident, and he called me up and he said, Tom, can I tell you something? And I said, what is it, Ken? About last night. And I thought he was going to compliment me. And he said, Tom, when you're an elected official, anger is a luxury you can no longer afford. And I heard that, and I was going to come back, and I let it sink in, and I realized he's absolutely right. When you sit up here, you can't afford to get angry, and you can't afford to hold grudges, and you can't afford to, the person who's opposing you on one issue can be your friend tomorrow. And also, that person, your kid might end up marrying their kid. This is a small place. And,
I'm afraid your time is up.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
We're on a roll.
I know. Mr. Megadishian.
I got so involved with his comment about Mr. Simon over there, I forgot the question, but no, I didn't, actually. No, but transparency. Making local government transparent is, first of all, I would reduce executive sessions to the absolute legal amount, where it's only for personnel only. I think all discussion should be public, as far as I'm concerned, and I know my running mate agrees with that. Public meetings are made for the public, whether they're watching at home or they're at a board meeting, whether it's a work session or it's a real session, a board meeting itself. It should be all open. If there's a contract going on or a negotiation going on that's being done behind closed doors, it should be done publicly. The public has the right to know where their money is being spent. If money is being given away to any particular organization, whoever it may be, and there's a contract outstanding, the residents need to know. The residents don't find this out until after the contract is signed, and I think that's really inappropriate. So all executive sessions should be done publicly. Thank you.
Thank you. Other than raising property taxes, what alternatives would you suggest as a means to raise revenue? Mr. Megardishian?
Well, my running mate and I have been, for the last several months, looking at the village's budget since last June. So from June to June, we actually pulled all the financials from the village. And we've been going through them line for line. There is so much fluff in our current budget that it's just beyond comprehension, to be quite honest with you. What we've noticed is there is a lot of items that have been submitted, undocumented, no backup, but being paid. And the typical answer that comes from our board currently is passed unanimously. And you know what? That doesn't go over too well with me. I've sat in these board meetings now since, I want to say, since June, since I've decided to run. Tom, I haven't seen you at any of our board meetings, to be quite honest with you, so I don't know if you've seen any of these things, but passed unanimously. And to me, that, that angers me, because there are residents who stand up, who will speak, and ask questions about the budget and not get an answer from it. And to me, that doesn't work. The resident deserves an answer. Whether you like them or dislike them, it doesn't matter. You have to give the resident an answer. They deserve it. They are a taxpayer. They are the ones paying this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
Raising revenue is always tricky, because what one person's revenue is another person's, slice of life, as it were. Nobody wants to raise property taxes. But, what we have to study is the staffing, of course. But, I'm not going to say go in willy-nilly and say, this person has to go, that person has to go. I want to see how the government's operating before I make decisions on people's livelihoods. But, I think that it's important to have had a history of looking at departments and knowing the village of Mamaroneck and working on budgets in various municipalities. I've been very proud in the town of Mamaroneck that we've been able to keep under the tax cap on most budgets. And it's not easy. And I think what you have to do is you have to go to the departments and you have to ask them what they really need, and give them let them know what the cap is, and that's their cap, and how do they keep under it, and let them make the decision, let them come back to you, because a lot of times they'll know where to cut better than you know where to cut. And you have to be able to take advice of the people who are there now. I wanted to comment upon going to meetings. When you're an elected official in another municipality, it's really not appropriate to go to the other municipalities' meetings and comment on stuff that's going on, because it's a conflict. But when I've spent a lot of time at Village and Mamaroneck board meetings over the decades, and I have an understanding of how things work and how they're supposed to work. Thank you.
Thank you both. The question and answer period is now closed. Each candidate will have a minute and a half to make a closing statement. Again, we'll start with Mr. Megardishian.
If I can find my closing statement, I will, but I won't. So I'll just thank, I guess not. I just want to thank the league again for hosting the event. I want to thank the audience for coming out. This was a great event. I think Tom and I spoke about the issues and concerns of the residents. My running mate and I have been walking door to door, as I've said earlier, and we've met the residents. We know the residents. We know what they're looking for. We know their concerns. They're all talking about the same topics and the same issues. But these issues have been going on for the last 20 years. Nothing has changed. Just think about it for a minute. Kathy Savold, who's here, is a former mayor. None of these issues have changed. We're still talking about traffic. We're still talking about infrastructure. Now it's time for real change. We really need to do something. Maria and I are bipartisan. We will move forward. We will work with the current board. We will make things happen. We promise you change. We will give you change. And we thank you again. And good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
Hi. Thank you, George, for coming tonight and participating. It's not easy to run for election, and I congratulate you and Maria and Nora for first-time candidates. It's not easy. For everybody watching at home, I appreciate you tuning in. I know you have over 1,000 choices on your cable TV that you chose this tonight. We all appreciate that. I truly believe that government can be a force for good in our lives. I think that we've lost faith in government as a society, and it's hard sometimes to keep that faith when you see some of the antics that go on both in the federal government and in the state government, and sometimes in the local government. But I believe if we're going to restore Americans' faith in local government, it has to start from the bottom up. You know, we've been waiting for a savior in Washington or a savior in the governorship, and it's not going to happen. It has to happen from us. It has to happen from getting the local people involved, to getting people to come to meetings, to listening to their ideas, to let them see it's an open process and they can participate and they can have, you know, a real impact. And they don't feel that now. They feel like that it's almost like a hopelessness that it's crept into the population, and it's sad, and it doesn't have to be that way. And you know, we're Americans. You know, we should expect better of ourselves, and we should expect better of our government, and we should demand better of our government. And it should start here, and it should start, you know, this November. And I urge everybody to come out to vote for myself and Nora Lucas. But even if you can't vote for us, come out and vote. It's really important. You know, show the powers that be that we want change. Thank you.
Thank you both.
You dismissed?
Okay, and now maybe we could do like a real speed change because we're running a little bit behind. We need our Village of Mamaroneck trustee candidates.
Introduce the candidates for Mamaroneck Village Trustee. Maria DeRose, running on the Republican, Conservative, Independence, and Reform Parties tickets, and Nora Lucas, running on the Democratic, Working Families, and Responsible Development Parties tickets. You will now each have a minute and a half to make an opening statement. Please follow the directions from the timekeeper. You'll get a 30-second warning and the stop sign. We drew lots prior to the forum, and Ms. DeRose will go first.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Maria DeRose, and I'm running for trustee in the Village of Mamaroneck. I want to thank the League for sponsoring the debate, as well as LMC-TV, but most of all, I want to thank all of you who have come out to either sit here and endure this long night or have stayed with us watching at home. I was born and raised in the Village, from Grant Street in Washingtonville to the Parkway in Shore Acres. I have 4 children who were born here, raised here, and still continue to live here. I'm an operations manager for an international corporation where I'm responsible for accounts payable and receivable, contract reviews, purchasing, human resources, travel, and event planning, all skills which will help me in my service as trustee. I served as the chairperson of the Ad Hoc Parking Committee, as well as secretary to the Ethics Board. I am a member and past vice president of the Columbiettes, as well as a former member and past co-president of the Mamaroneck Women's Club Evening Section. And I have also served as a vice president on the Resurrection Grammar School PTO. Since the start of my campaign, I have walked almost every street and rang almost every doorbell in this village. And if you live on one of the 5 streets that I haven't gotten to yet, rest assured I will be there before Election Day. I've gone house to house listening to fellow citizens' concerns because, to me, our village is made up of more than just 2 major political parties. Our village is made up of over 19,000 diverse individuals. And while our individual concerns may vary, we all share the common goal of having Mamaroneck be the best place to live for ourselves and our future generations. For far too long, our elected officials have been reactive instead of proactive. Decisions are being made with no regard to the future, and I have to stop now, but it's time for that to change.
Thank you. Ms. Lucas?
Good evening. My name is Nora Lucas. I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank the League for hosting this, and LMC-TV for recording it. I'm happy to see so many friendly faces, and thank you for the people watching at home. My husband and I were both raised locally and attended Mamaroneck High School. We bought our first house in Rhinebeck in 1986, and we're lucky to raise our daughter there. She just graduated from Rhinebeck High School. And within a month of my moving here, Paul Noto, who was a Republican, appointed me to the village's Landmarks Advisory Committee, where I served for many years, most of it as chairman. So from early on, my qualifications trumped party affiliation. My professional background is in historic preservation planning, but I have extensive volunteer experience in the village of Mamaroneck. Not only was I on the Landmarks Committee, I was on the Mamaroneck Affordable Condominium Board, which developed the regatta, giving us an affordable condo, giving us an ADA-compliant village hall, and I'm also on the Flood Mitigation Committee, so I'm very familiar with the Army Corps plan. I regularly attend board meetings. I understand the village's most pressing issues, and I'm concerned that the village is becoming more urban than suburban. I have a proven track record of working in a bipartisan manner with residents and staff to make the village a better place. I want to focus on the residents' needs over the needs of developers. Thank you.
Thank you both. Now we will begin the question and answer with a few questions from the League of Women Voters and from the audience. Again, you will each have a minute and a half to answer each question. What is your opinion on the pace of development in the village? And we'll start with you, Ms. Lucas.
Well, Mr. Morgadician just said nothing has changed in 10 or 20 years. I completely disagree. I think the pace of development has quickened, and I think we adopted a comprehensive plan in 2012, and the same night we developed a comprehensive plan, we voted to apply for a grant for transit-oriented development, which was not even contemplated by the comprehensive plan. We adopted that zoning law without doing a GEIS, and now we're confronted with a lot more housing units than we anticipated in our master plan, our comprehensive plan. That's affecting both of our school districts. Both school districts, Mamaroneck School District just did a bond last year, and now they're thinking about a Princeton plan because they can't fit all the children in the school. Rhinebeck floated a bond last year that didn't work. I think the pace of development could make our village be more like a city than a village, and I think that's something that we need to take care of quickly and now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rose?
We have overdeveloped, and we keep overdeveloping in the same area over and over again. And for too long, nobody has seen the problem because it wasn't in their backyard. Well, now we're starting to branch out into the other areas of the village, and now the other side of the tracks is starting to notice. Now, there was an article in Mamaroneck Review, not the Mamaroneck Review, the Mamaroneck Local, that Mamaroneck Schools, 650 new students. That's an entire building of students. That's just not one class. Where are they all coming from? Where are we all putting them? TOD, to me, was a disaster. The ideas behind it are a fallacy. It doesn't work in a suburb. It works in a borough. We need to really put the brakes on development. We haven't looked, I don't think I know what our master plan says because I don't think anybody bothers to check it. We are so out of character in the way we have been developing this village. We have been reactive instead of proactive. We are making decisions spur of the moment to accommodate one person or one development without even bothering to think how this is going to impact somebody else coming in, how it's going to impact the residents that already live here, and what it's going to do to our future generations 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. We need to put a halt on it, we need to take a breath, and we need to review and begin to plan accordingly.
Thank you. What ideas do you have to control and cut costs? We'll start with you, Mr. Rose.
As George said when he spoke, we looked at the budget. Our expenditures are just, we don't know what we're spending the money on. First of all, we need to get a hold on what we're spending the money on. In order to start decreasing how much we spend, in order to try and save taxpayers' money, and certainly not to increase taxes, we need to understand where the money's going. If we can't get answers to that from the people who are currently serving our community, then we have a real problem, because when you ask a question and you're getting blank stares, or worse yet, you're getting dismissed, or you're being told, don't worry, we know what we're doing, there's a problem. There's a real problem, and that has to be addressed. There are a lot of ways we could save the village a lot of money. We need to look at, the spending in our individual departments. We need to make sure that we have people who are doing the jobs correctly. We can't have 6 people doing the same job and another 4 people overseeing them. We really need to take a look at each and every inch of this, of our spending, and there are ways we could cut back on it, and we will look at it even further. I know I will look at it as a trustee. I make a vow, and I will sit down every week, if I need to, before the board meetings, with the clerk treasurer, with the village manager, and I will go through every item on that's being paid, and I will find out what it's for. This way, it can be justified, and that's what needs to be done.
Thank you. Ms. Lucas?
Thank you. I agree with Maria. The audit of the bills is shameful. I have a friend, Stuart Tiekert, who has been auditing the bills for years, and when he makes a comment, which is I think what Maria and George are referring to, he is ignored. He is the sort of the stalwart who has tried to check our bills. And I think that Tom and I would propose having a committee of people, of residents who can look at the bills. Other communities have one trustee do it, but I do think it's something that has to be carefully looked at before the meeting, and then I think every trustee has to really familiarize themselves with it, but it may be helpful for them to get some pointers from another trustee or a committee. In addition, I think one of the things we do terribly is procurement and competitive bidding, and I think we could save a lot of money if we were very careful. I'm not saying we should get the lowest bidder, because that's not always cost effective, but we need to review our consultants' contracts, because we have contracts with people 10, 12 years, and we don't review the contracts with them. So I would propose that we are very careful with our consultants' contracts. And finally, very, very careful in how we have managed our projects. The Jefferson Avenue Bridge cost the village a lot of taxpayer money. Residents complained, residents talked about it. Stuart Tiekert was one of the prime movers in that, and the board didn't listen. The board needs to listen, because the board the primary responsibility is to pass laws and to make sure we are fiscally sound. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from Celia Felsher. The village has faced a lot of controversy regarding developers' plans and interpretation, and and enforcement of our zoning laws. What do you think the village should do to No. What do you think the village should do to, and I'm so sorry.
What do you think the village should do to, and what experience do you have that would help avoid these controversies?
All right. I'll read the whole question again. The village has faced a lot of controversy regarding development plans and interpretation and enforcement of our zoning laws. What do you think the village should do to, and what experience do you have that would help avoid these controversies? I think we'll start with Ms. Lucas.
Okay. Well, I do think that any member of the zoning board or anybody who follows the zoning board would agree that the zoning board has been confronted with a lot of interpretations by residents, requests for interpretations, because decisions and permits have been issued that seem contrary to the zoning laws. The first thing I would do, overall, the largest thing we need to do is holistically evaluate our zoning code. We adopted our zoning code in 1968. We haven't done a holistic review of it, so that we change a thing here, we change something here, and we don't realize what the unintended consequences are, so sometimes the changes are not harmonized. But I also think we allow buildings in residential areas that are too big for the character of the building, and we're in a building boom now, so developers want to build the biggest house possible, but it dwarfs the other residences. So I think we need to reduce probably the bulk of houses. And finally, we need to make sure that our zoning code is enforced fairly for all residents. And that simply means, I think our building inspector, who has said that he doesn't quite understand the code, he wants some help with code enforcement, we need to make sure that the code is clear, that there are guidelines for enforcing it, and that it's fair to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rose?
I agree. I think the key to it is to have a clear and concise zoning code. If you don't have a code that is clear and concise, then it's open up to interpretation. And that is one of the biggest problems in our village. And it's very difficult to enforce if you don't know what you're enforcing. So we need clear zoning laws. I think if we do that, we could encourage responsible building, we could encourage building that is in character with the village, and we could avoid frivolous litigation that comes because one person granted one thing and then someone else's interpretation, understood another thing, and we have then, village spends a good chunk of change on lawsuits. And, I threw out the word frivolous, and to the people who are involved in them, they're not frivolous because it, becomes their passion and their thing. But to the taxpayers in general, when you're throwing away hundreds of thousands of dollars on litigation, on something that could have been resolved if you had clear guidance from the beginning, or if you had parties working together from the beginning, or if, anybody could have come to the table and mitigated. But we need to have measures in place, and I could put those measures in place, with the rest of the board to make sure that our laws are correct and we don't run into these problems again.
Thank you. The next question is from Kathy Savold. What do you see as the most important environmental issues facing the village, and how would you address those issues? We'll start with you, Mr. Rose.
Hi, Kathy, thank you. That's a great question. The environment, pollution is horrible. Village of Mamaroneck has been doing stuff. We enacted the, law on plastic bags. We're trying to encourage people to bring their bags in, we recycle. A couple of municipalities now are doing food scrap recycling, which is another good thing for our environment. We need to make sure that, when things happen in our village, we're following the laws that are put into, place to protect us as a waterfront community. The HCZM is putting all their input into building and so on and so forth. I think individual residents should be encouraged to recycle more, to take into account that global warming is real, is happening. We do have climate change, and we need to do all we can, to try and stop that and start to reverse it and just make things better for everyone and take care of our environment.
Thank you. Ms. Lucas?
Well, I think we have many environmental issues, but the two most significant environmental issues are the water pipes. And I think, nobody said it better than Nancy Seligson. We in our village, we are in the same situation that the town of Mamaroneck is. We have, under consent decrees, we've paid a lot of fines, we've paid a lot of consultants to look at things, but we need to develop a plan to repair and reline our sewer pipes and our water pipes. I'm an architectural historian, and I've done research on all of these communities, and we were all incorporated to be taxing districts. We were incorporated to provide roads and lights and bluestone sidewalks, and then ultimately sewers for the communities. And that was more than 100 years ago, and we have really got to repair the infrastructure that these communities were formed to create. In addition to which, flooding is a tremendous issue. And, we are in the process of the Army Corps plan, but we don't know when that will be coming back to us. The chief's report is about to be signed. Congress has to fund it. Congress hasn't funded a lot of things lately. So we are reliant upon Congress for the first funding, and then it'll come back to us for more design phases. It's not nearly designed. So we can't rely on the Army Corps plan to solve our flooding, because A, it may never happen, but B, when it does happen, it won't be for a few years. So I think we need to really consider using more impervious surfaces and elevating properties and not building so much in the floodplain. Thanks.
Thank you. For the past 2 years, the public beach at Harbor Island Park has been locked during the off-season. Should the beach be open year-round for the public's enjoyment? And we'll start with you, Ms. Lucas.
Absolutely. I think that is a no-brainer. The fence is not only unsightly, it's unfriendly. Our friendly village should allow access to our beach. I grew up going to Harbor Island all year long, and one of the nicest times to be there is in the winter. And I think that it's a disservice to the community to have that cut off. And I will also say that the village board was discussing at work session the other night a new comprehensive plan for the Harbor Island Park. Well, we have a comprehensive plan for Harbor Island Park, and we've never implemented it. That plan does not include a fence. So I think that we need to open up the beach, and I want to talk a little bit about the master plan, because the master plan, which Maria said that she hasn't read and isn't being followed, it's true, it hasn't been followed. There are a lot of recommendations in the comprehensive plan that haven't been followed. The board is updating it, but we're still having to clean off the checklist that was generated in 2012. And ultimately, the comprehensive plan, the reduction of the size of houses, the repair of our zoning code, and the limitation on development is all about maintaining the village character. And Harbor Island is the jewel of the village, and we can't begin to hope to maintain our village character without really maintaining Harbor Island Park. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Rose?
I agree. I think the harbor is a wonderful asset to our village. It's one of our greatest assets, and I think the beach should be open, but it's not as simple as that. We need to do this, and we need to make sure it's done in a way that is responsible. We need to make sure that it's done in a way that doesn't open us up to liability. Signs that say no swimming, no posting, no whatever, people see them, they read them, and they're going to go in the water in the middle of December when there's no lifeguard there. And what happens when, God forbid, somebody drowns? Then, residents, everybody's going to be upset. It's going to be, why was the beach open? So I would love to see the beach being open, but I don't want to see it open when there's no lifeguards there until we can find a way to ensure that it can be used responsibly and with a minimal, if not no, accidents happening. So that's how I feel about it.
Thank you. We have a lot of new residential development in the pipeline. How can we best manage the impacts on resources and quality of life in the village?
Wow. We're having a hard time managing the development that's going on now. I would hate to see these same people in office continue to manage what's coming up in the future. I really think it's time for our village to take a break and catch up. We have been building at a rate that is so great that our infrastructure can't keep up with it. And we need to take a pause, and we need to have our infrastructure now catch up. We're looking at major projects coming down the pike from Westchester Joint Waterworks to replace, old asbestos mains. The plumbing that we have now can't support all this new development. We can't continue to keep putting more and more and more on top of it. I think it's really time that we just paused, had our infrastructure caught up with our development, and then reassess and evaluate. And hopefully in that time we could come up, with a final master plan, and we'll have people in power that are going to look at it and follow it.
Thank you. Ms. Lucas?
Well, short of adopting a moratorium on development, we won't be able to stop things that are in the pipeline. And there are things that are actually on the boards that are going to be built. And I think one of the things that we should have done and should start to do in our approval process is require developers to offset the benefit that they're going to get from their development in the village with some actual payments for infrastructure to improve our infrastructure. Whatever they're going to need from us, they need to provide double. But I think we have to make sure that when we have development in the village, it benefits us. This is something that I've been working on for years. I've been an advocate for maintaining the code, for not allowing development to overscale communities, which I think has happened both because of our building department and because of the philosophy of our planning board. I think I have a track record of understanding code, of working on code, of writing code, of complying with code on state, local, and national levels in my profession. And I want to keep using those skills to try and encourage the right kind of development and the right size development for the Village of Mamaroneck. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question was submitted by John Garufi. Thank you. I've watched our Board of Trustees meetings and am distressed by the lack of civility, both in how trustees treat each other and how they at times treat members of the public. Please comment on this and tell us what you would do to stop this behavior. Start with you.
Well, that is a good question, and I am a member of the public that has been disrespected by the Board of Trustees, so I promise as a trustee I will never do that to any of the residents. I think that ultimately it starts from the top, and I think Tom Murphy is a great facilitator. So I think that when he is at the head of the dais, those kinds of things won't happen. But I think that it's very hard if you are either a member of the public or you are another board member to be bombarded by someone who's being impolite and rude to you. And I think that has colored the dissension in our village amongst residents who don't agree about things and amongst the board, and I think that that's counterproductive, and I promise when I am a trustee, I will not participate in that, and I will respect the public, because the public's ideas are really important, and the public needs to be able to be comfortable to participate in our local government, because without public participation in local government, we don't have a transparent government and we don't have a functional government. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rose?
Hi, Mr. Rufi. I agree with you. I'm embarrassed too. It's very combative and it's terrible, and I could assure you that when I'm trustee, it will not happen. Personalities are great, but they have no business coming into play when you're trying to solve a pragmatic solution, and when you are dealing with individuals, you have to show them respect. It's about basic human decency and basic human kindness, and we need to have people up there who possess those qualities. I could tell you from my experience on the parking committee as chairperson, I dealt with a lot of different personalities. I dealt with people from both parties, and we came together in a bipartisan fashion to do what's best for the village residents. And how we did that was by speaking to the village residents, and actually not only speaking to them, but listening to them. I went out myself and spoke to every single business owner on Mamaroneck Avenue to find out what their needs were. Then we produced a survey. We received over 450 responses. Those were 450 of our residents that took time to communicate with us. It was through their communication and the time that they took that made us come to the decision for the single space meters on Mamaroneck Avenue. It's all about what the community wants, and they need to be respected. And I can promise you, I will continue to keep respecting each and every community member.
Thank you. What is your vision for the industrial area, including environmental issues such as flooding? I'll start with you, Ms. Groves.
The industrial area, I'm guessing you're talking about the Maker Zone. It's a great concept, but we need to ensure, again, that it's done properly. We're talking about a whole lot of building that's going to go on in that area to improve it. Well, you can't, this village has been fixing one thing and breaking another by doing this. We'll improve that area, but at what cost? At what cost to the traffic? What cost to the residents of Washingtonville? They're going to be the ones who are most affected by it. You know, there's one way in and out of it. There's Fenimore Road, then it goes down to Hoyt to get back on 95. You have an off-ramp that comes out on Fenimore Road from 95, and then you have to go back through Mamaroneck Avenue to get back on 95. That's going to affect Washingtonville, and Washingtonville is already overburdened and overstressed. I grew up on Grand Street. My family moved when I was 10 years old. The reason we moved is because there was no parking and there was no place to go. That was 40 years ago. It's worse. I never thought it could get worse. It's worse. And also flooding. Flooding has to be on everybody's minds first and foremost. We can't wait for the Army Corps of Engineers to come in. Every time we flood, we realize there's a problem. But what has this village done to maintain our rivers and streams? I went on a river walk. I started up in Harbor Heights, went through Harrison, came down to Columbus Park. Our streams are in bad shape. We do nothing to maintain them. That's a big problem. We have to take care of ourselves. We can't keep waiting for a savior to come in.
Thank you. Ms. Lucas.
Well, the industrial area is the next new thing that the village is considering rezoning, and the village has hired a consultant, and the goal is to have a maker zone so that there's some build work spaces. And happily, the village is doing a generic environmental impact statement, which is something that they did not do for TOD. So the village will consider all the effects of the full build-out in terms of traffic, and I think the zoning will reflect what the community can stand and what the community can support. The industrial area has also been hard hit by flooding, and many properties have just been paved over for parking lots. So it's not a great use of a property, but it's also bad for flooding because it's an impervious surface, not a pervious surface. So I am pleased that the village is considering in the proposed rezoning for the industrial area, unlike the proposed rezoning in transit-oriented development, they're doing the right kind of environmental reviews, and they've hired a good environmental consultant. So I remain hopeful that if this is rezoned, the uses will be able to be something that the community can sustain.
Thank you. The next question was submitted by Shelley Crook. Thank you. Is transparency in government important to you? If so, what would you do to promote transparency in the village? We'll start with you, Ms. Lucas.
Yeah, transparency in government is vital to me. And as the chairman of the Village of Mamaroneck Democratic Party, I organized a seminar this June where Robert Freeman, who's the head of the New York State Committee on Open Government, kind of the open government guru for the country, came to speak to train any village officials, any residents, anybody who wanted to come. We had it at the library, and it's been repeated on LMC-TV, about the open meetings law and about what is required to comply with the open meetings law. You know, what kinds of topics a board can properly discuss in executive session or in a private meeting, and what they can't. And what I would promise as trustee is the only things that I would agree to discuss in executive session are things that, because of a privacy nature or for a legal reason, have to be discussed in executive session. Because you can discuss things in executive session, but you don't have to. And I would only allow the board, or I would only participate if it was a requirement under the open meetings law, and I would severely limit the number of executive sessions that our board has, because I think openness and sunshine is the best ingredient for a good, fair government.
Thank you. Mr. Rose?
I agree. Our government needs to be open, and we do need to limit the executive sessions, and we really need to stick to that and keep them just to matters that are of legal importance and nothing else. I think right now what we have is what I like to call selective openness. Our meetings are televised. Every board meeting, every planning board meeting, zoning board, they're all televised, but people don't know where they are, when they are, how to find them. You know, many people have said, I don't know how this happened in the village, or how do I find out how this is going on? We can be more transparent. We live in, 2017, we live in the age of technology. I get emails from our current mayor every time we're gonna get a drop of rain. We could put an email system in place to email residents and say, hi, village board meeting is gonna be happening tomorrow night. These are the items that are on the agenda. This way you don't have to go searching for it. This way you know that a meeting is coming up and what's going to be discussed. And what do you say, people who don't have emails, well, somebody might have to have, we'll have one and we'll let you know. Your neighbor could tell you, did you know they're planning to do this on our street, on our block? And I know this can be done the same way the village, was able to force everybody to join an ESCO when they didn't know and opt out. You could also get an email, and then if you don't want to be bothered, you can opt out.
Thank you. The question and answer period is now closed. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to make a closing statement. So we'll start again with Mr. Rose.
Thank you. I really want to thank everybody again for staying with us this evening. We have a lot of issues in this village, and yes, a lot of things haven't changed, and we have to ask ourselves why. We need fresh ideas in this village. If you take a look around, our Board of Trustees, the majority of our Board of Trustees are HCZM that, controls our planning boards, our zoning boards. These are the boards and facilities and things that make the decisions. We keep recycling the same people with the same ideas over and over again. Our village needs volunteers. We need people from all parts of this village to come in and volunteer and, share their skills. But again, like I said, selective transparency. A lot of people don't know. We do a poor job of publishing what we need when we need it. So we need to make our village more open, more inviting, and as trustee, I will do that. And you know what? If you're not happy with the way things are and you want change, ask yourselves, who's been in control, who's making decisions, who's putting these people there? And then ask yourselves, am I voting for change, or am I voting for the same old thing with just a different name? Thank you all for being here, and please make sure to come out and vote on November 7th.
Thank you. Ms. Lucas?
Thank you. Well, I want to thank the League for making this happen. This was a great evening. As Catherine said, it was fun. And I want to thank the audience for participating, both at home and here. So I hope this evening that you've learned something about me and my qualifications. But it's not just my qualifications that are at issue. Trustees have to work with other members of the board to be effective. In electing me, you'll elect somebody who is approachable and kind. I expect residents and staff will be able to bring problems and solutions to me. Those who know me best know about my diligence about factual details. I fact check, so I can't be fooled for long. And I know where to find the agenda online, and I do think that the village could do a great job of putting out some emails with some highlights about it. I'm not on the mayor's special list. I know the mayor has a special list that some people get. I'm not on it. I'm also not on, and I also would say that I think that the village, the trustees last year, the referendum that gave all of the board members the authority to pick land use members is a good thing, and I think we will see some changes because it was the same small group of people picking land use members for 10 years, and that's what that's gotten us. But I do my jobs, paid and volunteer, thoroughly and responsibly. I attend meetings religiously. I do it regularly. I've done it for years. I'm an advocate. I get calls from residents about having concerns. They want advice. I've got 3 today. People wanted me to be at the planning board tonight. I've become an advocate for the public, and I think that's a quality that will make me a good trustee. I urge you to vote on November 7th, and I would be honored to have your vote. Please vote for Tom and for me. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. That concludes our candidates forum. Thank you all so much, candidates and audience members, for attending, and please get home safely.
Thank you.
And don't forget to turn your ballots over and vote on the other side.
For reading all that handwriting.
Thank you.